What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So, I know this movie came out way back in 2021, but I'm going to be honest and tell you guys that I simply never got around to seeing it. But I do plan to go see Dune Part 2 in the next day or so. So, with that in mind, in today's video, I'm going to be giving my very late reaction and review of Dune, or as some people are calling it, Dune Part 1. And believe it or not, we're not going to really get into a ton of spoilers here. I know that's something a little different for you guys, but so you don't have to worry about spoilers too much here in case you haven't seen this movie yet and you don't want to know anything that happens in it. And so, with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. Dune, titled on screen as Dune Part 1, is a 2021 American epic science fiction film directed by Denis Villeneuve. I think that's how you say his name. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But he co-wrote the screenplay with Jon Spaihts and Eric Roth. It is the first of a two-part adaptation of the 1965 novel of the same name, written by Frank Herbert. And it is set in the far distant future. And the film follows Paul Atreides as his family, the noble house Atreides, is thrust into war for a deadly and inhospitable desert planet, Arrakis. The ensemble cast includes Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Stephen McKinley, Henderson, Zendaya, Chang Chen, Sharon Duncan Brewster, Charlotte Rampling, Jason Momoa, and Javier Bardem. Now, the film is the third adaptation of Dune, following David Lynch's 1984 film and John Harrison's 2000 television miniseries. After an unsuccessful attempt by Paramount Pictures to produce a new adaptation, Legendary Entertainment acquired the Dune film and television rights in 2016, with Villeneuve signing on as director in February of 2017. Now, production contracts were secured only for the first film, which I thought was kind of weird because typically, these films would just go ahead and shoot this thing back to back, but that's not what happened here. What production wanted to make sure is that the first film would be a success before a sequel would be produced. Again, that's something a little bit different these days. Principal photography took place from March to July in 2019, with locations including Budapest, Jordan, Norway, and Abu Dhabi. And it certainly looked like it. Dune was originally scheduled for a late 2020 release, but of course it was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the film eventually did premiere at the 78th Venice International Film Festival on September 3rd of 2021, before its international release on September 15th. It was then released in the United States and streaming on HBO Max on October 22nd. Dune was a box office success, of course, grossing $402 million on its $165 million budget. And it was received well by critics and audiences, with praises for Villeneuve's direction, screenplay, and visual effects, ambition, costume design, Hans Zimmer's musical score, Hans Zimmer, that's my guy, cinematography, and the faithfulness to the source material, which I really appreciated. The film won 6 awards at the 94th Academy Awards and was nominated for 4 other categories, including Best Picture, in addition to receiving numerous other accolades. And of course, we know that the sequel to the Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2, had its world premiere at the Odeon Lux Leicester Square in London on February 15th of this year. And of course, that movie is going to be coming out here. Well, you can probably already go see it as of the making of this video. Now, at the time of the making of this video, Dune Part 1 has a rather impressive 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's based on 511 critic reviews. But it has a higher audience score of 90%, and that's based on over 5,000 verified ratings. It has a slightly lower, but still favorable Metascore of 74 on Metacritic, and that's based on just 68 critic reviews. and a comparable user score of 7.9, and that's based on over 1,700 user ratings. And finally, it has an 8.0 out of 10 on IMDb, and that's based on over 700,000 reviews. So, pretty popular film. Now, first, I want to say that, again, I know I'm like 2 years late to this particular party, but I don't know. For whatever reason, I just never got around to watching this film when it came out back in 2021. Maybe it was the COVID and everything that was kind of going on, and we were all kind of discombobulated. But I digress. But like I said, I do plan to go see part 2 here in the next day or so. So I figured I should at least go watch part 1 first, and so I did. And, I've heard people make the point that this story may have inspired George Lucas's Star Wars, and I can certainly see that now having watched part 1. I will say that I thought Star Wars was the better film, and judging by Rotten Tomatoes, a lot of people agree with me there, for whatever that's worth. I do think this particular movie was a bit longer than it actually had to be, considering what happens in it. But I do understand that 2.5 hours is pretty much standard practice these days for films of this nature. So as far as I'm concerned, it is what it is. Now, I thought the writing here was fine, but I'm not going to spend much time overpraising Villeneuve and company because with the film being based on a book, and a pretty popular book at that, the crew, they had the answers to the test here. So, in my mind, it would have been an absolute criminal act if they had somehow messed up the writing part in all of this, like I said, with an entire book to adapt. And all the answers right there in front of your face. All you have to do is just kind of pick out, what's important and kind of go from there. Story-wise, again, I think there was a pretty good bit of dead space in the film. I think Villeneuve kind of drew out a lot of the on-screen action, maybe a little bit more than I would have. And I also think that that's why at times I kind of struggled to stay completely plugged in throughout the film. I did have to stop it a couple of times while I was watching it. I mean, due to the length, and like I said, there was some parts where I just was like, okay, I need to kind of, take a bathroom break, whatever's going to be, and come back. I could see that the film, and by extension the book, I suppose, does function at least primarily as a multi-layered, commentary on culture, religion, ecology, and even perhaps human nature. The imperial family of House Atreides, arriving on the desert planet of Arrakis in order to extract, mine and ship what the characters are referring to as spice, off-world for profit, is surely tantamount to, Westerners going to Middle Eastern countries in search of oil, for example, and doing the same thing. And I found that to be an extremely thoughtful aspect of this particular story. I like things that kind of make me think a little bit, and you can kind of see, parallels, kind of where the writers kind of got the ideas for the story that they're telling us, I think is always an interesting part of my movie watching experience. So I really did enjoy that. I felt like the casting was well done, but films like this never really have an issue in that department. So there's not really a lot to talk about there either. The acting was superior because, well, if you can cast pretty much whoever you want in a film because you've got the money and the kind of film that actors know is going to be a big deal, then you tend to get good actors, which tend to give you good acting because, who's going to cast a bad actor if they've got access to good ones? Am I right? Now, I did rather enjoy the visuals in this film. I thought that the world building was pretty exquisite. And it made the film feel epic, something that should definitely be watched in a theater. And so, again, like I said, that's kind of what I expected from a film of this stature. And, overall, I would give this film a 75% or a 7.5 if you're thinking IMDb score. So not too far off what the general consensus is. I think this film had every advantage when it comes to the elements that, make a film successful. It had a popular IP, an adequate budget, competent writers, directors, and producers, and an accomplished cast and crew. And typically when you have those things, all of those things at your disposal, and you don't, meddle and have your writers, overwoke the story, you're usually going to end up with something pretty good. And though there are more than a few science fiction movies that I would certainly put ahead of Dune, I'll admit I am interested enough in Dune to spend a few bucks at my home theater here over the next couple of days or so to see how this story ends. But what do you guys think? Did you see Dune? If you did you think it was a good movie? Do you have plans to see Dune Part 2? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you who might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. Also, be sure to go and check out themadscreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write and apparently another part to this movie to watch. So I'll catch y'all on the next video.